they own the generation, the transmission, the distribution, the meters. You get a bill from them every month. You know, a lot of states depend, and a lot of customers depend on their hometown utility to help them lower their energy use and slash their bills. So let's see how we're doing here in Florida. This is from 2007. This is a ranking of utilities from across the country, and you can see that Florida utilities did not break the top 100 in terms of meeting demand through energy efficiency programs. So you can see that the energy savings at Florida Power and Light and the rest of the large utilities are about 0.2%, where other utilities around the country are capturing 1% to 2.5%. So why do they resist, generally, meaningful energy efficiency, and for that matter, distributed power resources? So stick with me. I know this formula looks a little complicated, but there isn't not going to be a test on this later. But just real briefly, okay, the revenue requirement, that's the amount of money that the utility needs to get from you to cover their fixed costs and their profit. The base rate, and I have that highlighted in blue, or rather in red, is their capital investments, power plants, transmission lines. And their rate of return, they earn a rate of return on that base rate. And if you're an FPL customer, or rather if you're an FPL shareholder, they get a return on equity of about 10.5% on that base rate. And the expenses are just run through dollar for dollar. So for instance, an expense would be fuel. So the company doesn't make any money on that. So if you want to maximize shareholder value, which is an executive of any private company, you have a fiduciary duty to do, you're going to want to keep adding to that rate base. You want to keep adding power plants, you want to keep adding transmission in order to maximize shareholder value. And as you might expect, this is not a friendly regulatory formula when it comes to efficiency, because what happens when you lower your energy use?
I don't make money.
Well, you save money on your bill, for starters, generally, but also you're reducing demand to the utility. And if demand is reduced, then the utility has a tougher time going to Florida Public Service Commission saying, or justifying the need for a new power plant. So it's hard to get meaningful energy efficiency with that kind of regulatory disincentive. The same with distributed power like solar PV panels. If you start using those, you're reducing your need for energy from your hometown utility. Demand goes down, and they have to defer or delay power plants into the future, which are the very assets that they earn a rate of return on. So you can see that this particular is called cost of service rate making. It's worked really well for many years, but now the paradigm is changing. It's a challenge. It's a challenge system, and will be interesting to see how this regulatory paradigm changes over the next few years. And I'm going to pretty much just skip over this slide because of time constraints, but there are a lot of issues with the way resource planning is done in Florida. And, again, I'm not going to go into the details of it, but I will just hit the last two bullets, and that is that Florida's big investor-owned utilities don't use all energy efficiency that costs less than new generation. You think you would do that, but we don't do that in Florida. So we need to level the playing field through realigning the incentives, actually providing a reward to the investor-owned utilities for helping people save money and somehow incorporating more